I don't want to see a perfect band. I want to know that the guitar player is not going to play the perfect notes all night because he's a human being. I want to see a band like the jam scene and all that. It's like those musicians are taking chances every night. Like, don't you want that in a live performance? Like, I don't know. I think that's what makes that music cool. Yeah.
So here we are. Mark, so glad to have you on here, man. So for everyone out there listening, Mark is a guitarist. You might have heard of him from the Fearless Flyers. He's well known for his work with 4-time Grammy award-winning band Snarky Puppy. And he's also touring with Lettieri Group. Lettieri Group is coming to Columbus, Ohio. They'll be here on the 24th at the Summit Music Hall. Mark, so to start this off, man, how much of that show can we expect to be improvised?
The solos will be improvised. The compositions are not. Those are compositions with parts that everyone must play. But we do kind of improvise within the structure of the composition. So certain things will change, but we're not just kind of going up there and just going like, all right, guys, E, so there are songs, and then we kind of improvise within the framework of the material, kind of the way Snarky Puppy would or something like that.
So when you're looking at putting together your show, what do you feel like the improvised parts of the show add to the concert as a whole? Like, what do you think about those free, unscripted parts can be so moving?
Well, I think a lot of it just has to do with how the crowd's feeling. If we feel like we have room to stretch out a section, and the crowd will kind of respond, then we'll do that. So I like, if people are dancing, for example, or just very energetic or very pensive and very concentrated. I mean, you can use all different kinds of audience emotions to determine how you want to improvise within a set. Sometimes if I feel like my guitar solos are going too long, I will stop and cue the next section. This is going nowhere. But more often than not, I structure the set lists to where it kind of depends on if it's a place we've played before or if it's maybe a crowd that I think is familiar with what we do. I have a couple songs that are kind of like good openers that are energetic, but not like beat over the head right away. But then if it's an audience in a town that we've played in a lot and they know what to expect, then we bring the first song as something really energetic and up tempo and stuff like that. I don't know what Columbus wants to hear. I've never played there, so we'll see.
Yeah, there's an eclectic bunch here in Columbus. We'll see which target audiences show up here. We might have some of the old heads, some of the dance crazy folks like myself. Okay. We'll see.
All right.
So talking about groove music specifically, like high energetic rhythm based music, talking about the pocket and the philosophy and strategy behind how you're using the pocket. Can you talk to me about during certain sections that are improvised, are you consciously pushing the pocket forward or dragging it back? And how could those lead to a different effect in the mind of the listener?
It depends on the tune. I mean, I have some kind of like more mid to down tempo kind of funk tunes, and there have sections where we can lay it back in the pocket really far. But generally, I think whatever we do, we've got to do it as a band, and I kind of defer to my rhythm section more to kind of create that rather than me, namely the drummer. If he wants to pull back, like, we'll go with him. Again, it's sort of just deciding what the audience needs at that particular juncture. Like with the up-tempo stuff, if we hit kind of like a Minneapolis style 4 on the floor kind of funk groove, we'll just stay right at that tempo for 6-7 minutes or something, whatever it is, because that's kind of what the composition, that's what the moment sort of calls for. It wouldn't really be applicable to all of a sudden start playing behind the beat and kind of dragging and doing that sort of like D'Angelo-esque kind of thing. I wouldn't really work there, right? But we have other songs where that totally works. I form it to where there's peaks and valleys in the mood. If you've beaten people over the head with a bunch of aggressive stuff, then you probably need to kind of give them a break you know, play a ballad or something.
Because some people
I've got
they say find your thing that people love and just crush that and just own that. And
sure.
I think it's also very interesting, the artistry behind doing the opposite. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's true what you said. I mean, unfortunately for me, my thing is kind of diverse. So, I choose to express myself in the band, in multiple different ways. So there is going to be really aggressive rock oriented stuff, and there's going to be really mellow kind of jazz blues ballad stuff. And frankly, I love having a show that's that diverse, and I think my listeners expect that because you get the people that want to hear the mellow stuff, and you get the people that want to hear, the aggressive stuff. And so if you come to a Mark Lettieri Group show, you're going to get all of it. It's not going to be one thing for 90 minutes.
Can you talk to me about tension and release, but like specifically about tension and release when using it as a composer and as an improvising musician? What is that effect you're hoping the tension and release will have in the ear of the person listening?
Man, honestly, I guess I haven't really thought that deep into it. I mean, as far as like the compositional process, I just try to make sure that each song is the best song it can be, whether that's something that's aggressive or something that's mellow. And then when it comes time to presenting it, I usually just kind of craft it as what I think the audience is ready for, like there's a couple moments in our set where if I'm maybe playing some of the baritone music and it gets into this kind of like extended funk vamp or something, after, like I said, after we've done that for a little while, I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't think anybody else wants to hear it anymore. So we do something different. And I think maybe the word I'm looking for is just diversity in a set, and making sure that we touch on as many kinds of emotions that we can, just based on what kind of songs I have. Yeah, I mean, it's like you're pacing a meal or something. I don't know if you've ever eaten one of those restaurants where they give you like one little bite of a thing every course or something. It's like one of those tasting menus or something. But it's like everything has its own little flavor, its own little unique thing, but it kind of progresses the meal forward. So I guess you could kind of look at it like that, something really sweet, something really salty, something really savory, whatever.
But that's not really how you're looking at it in making your music. You're kind of just trying to make the best song possible.
Yeah, the bigger picture is actually not that big to me. I just like when I'm making a record, for example, there's usually a point where I have collected enough ideas, enough demos or something, and then I just listen to them and be like, okay, I guess these could all work together, or maybe these should be on a different record, maybe these should be on a baritone record or something. But even if they don't make sense, I still put them out because I think they're cool. I kind of don't care. I mean, it's like, this is the age of Spotify. Nobody listens to records top to bottom anyway. So I can just put out what I want when I want. And if people dig it, great. If they don't, they can just skip to the next song or something. I don't know.
I love it.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me when you're making a song, how you're determining quality for yourself with your own music?
Sure. I try to stay true to what I think makes what I do unique, and I'm of course I'm a product of my influences. So there's obviously going to be stuff that may or may not sound like somebody else or another band or something. But if I can at least do that in a way that feels more authentic to the way I would do it, I try to stay focused on that kind of stuff. But really, I think a lot of it kind of happens in the demo process. Like if I'm happy with the way the demo sounds and feels like a complete composition, then I know it's going to be cool when I bring it to a band, and do it with live instruments and stuff like that. So I take that part of it pretty seriously. I like to have everything really planned and ready to go and worked out and arranged. And then, of course, when we get in the studio, if we have to change things, then that's fine too. But I need as much of a structure of a skeleton as possible.
The first thing you said there that stuck with me is the unique way you would approach something. And you said, of course, you have your influence.
I don't know what that is. can't tell you what I sound like. People have to tell me that all the time, and it's usually I'm just like, okay, like I get it. You know, it's like I'll never be as awesome as Eddie Van Halen. I'll never be as funky as Prince, but you know, I can try to do those things in my own sad ass kind of way, and then hopefully it sounds cool
in your own sad ass way.
Yeah, I think, man, I think artists, we care too much. We need to care less.
I think that's just true for all of us.
Yeah, just there's so much that's really not that important. Just do what you like. If it makes you happy, then hit record.
Yeah, let's talk about perfectionism.
Saying? I mean, it's like well, that's what I mean. I think it's like a lot of times artists don't even finish stuff because they're so worried about A, B, C, D, and E that they have a hard time just kind of losing all the kind of superficial stuff that keeps you from really being creative. You know, and most people will know internally if something's just not good or just, you know, is a ripoff or something like that. Maybe some people, maybe not. I mean, man, I've made 6 records. It's like, it's a lot of records for, I mean, a fair amount, I guess, maybe not as many as some people, but for some of my age, I've done a lot, I think, and I'm kind of just learning, you know, the little idiosyncrasies in my playing and in my writing and stuff that I, you know, I'm learning to kind of maybe accept. Like there's probably certain things maybe I don't really like or wish could be more perfect or something. And I'm just kind of like, I don't care about those things so much anymore.
I think that's beautiful though. Like, because with perfectionism, we get intimidated by critics before we even start doing something.
Sure. Yeah.
And we get lost in the details, and even getting outside of art, like our sense of self-importance and caring too much about anything. While it's important to want to do the right thing and a great job, it can be contrived if one cares too much. And that's so cool to hear someone at such a high level like yourself with your craft totally recognizes that. And I'm so curious, like when you're finishing a demo, like what your wrestling match is like with perfectionism.
I usually kind of know that feeling. I'm like, this is finished, you know. You just feel it. You just sort of know. And if there's any sort of doubts, then you kind of have to look at the doubts. And if it's like a major doubt, like something that can be fixed, like or edited or rewritten or rearranged or something, then you can work on that. But if it's sort of like, well, I don't know, we'll just see what happens when the band gets there. That's an okay feeling. Like I had to put in a song for this new Snarky Puppy record, and I was like really happy with the demo, but I knew that the guys were going to play it a certain way and it was going to come out a certain way. So like leaving a little bit of that room for human interpretation is where the cool stuff happens, you know. And all this to say, you know, I don't I don't mean to say that I don't care or that I'm just totally nonchalant about everything. I mean, it's not an excuse to suck. You don't want to suck. But just understand that like perfection is not attainable, and most of the time if it is attained, it produces something that's just not that interesting. Most of my favorite artists all made their music probably before the year 2000. I mean, there's like, I have some modern acts that I really dig and stuff like that in certain genres, but the majority of my core influences were making records when they recorded mistakes all the time. And then they would play them live with other human beings without computers. You know what I mean? So like at some point it's like, I don't want to see a perfect band. I want to know that the guitar player is not going to play the perfect notes all night because he's a human being. You know what I mean? I want to see a band like, and I think you seem like you're pretty hip to the jam scene and all that. It's like those musicians are taking chances every night. Like, don't you want that in a live performance? Like, I don't know. I think that's what makes that music cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I was following a band on tour, I wouldn't want to hear the same thing every night. You know, I mean, they might play the same set or something or repeat songs, but like if things are different from night to night, like that's great. I try to leave space for that kind of stuff to happen when I record and perform.
Would you say your relationship with composing music and playing music is like a spiritual thing for you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, if I don't do it, I'm generally in a bad mood. It's interesting. I mean, yeah, I love playing gigs. I love writing music and hearing kind of the finished product. Of course, we all torture ourselves about stuff like, is it perfect or is it good or whatever? But there's kind of an element of freedom once you've finished something and it's out and you're terrified by it and you want everybody to like it, but then people tell you that they like it, which always feels great. But then, going and playing it and seeing how people react is always really cool. And, sometimes I play stuff and people don't like it, and it's fine. The moment that I'm on stage is probably my most favorite time. It's all the logistical stuff leading up to it that I hate.
Can you talk to me about how you encourage yourself to be more vulnerable with your creative process?
Well, I mean, I send my ideas to my friends a lot, and sometimes I wish I hadn't. Usually what it is you'll send it to them having doubts, and then they'll like confirm one of the doubts, and you're like, son of a gun, like I'm gonna, he's right, that bridge is too long or whatever. But maybe that's good. It's good to have those kinds of friends around that can help you filter out stuff. And I'm maybe not quite as active as I was, but posting videos on social media and stuff like that of all different kinds of ideas and riffs and licks and what have you. I mean, like, that's pretty vulnerable stuff. I mean, it's not like the most deepest creative thing to do, but you're kind of sharing in a way you get instant feedback, which can be daunting sometimes. But if there wasn't social media, I would still be writing songs. I mean, obviously.
Do you ever write something where you're like, no, this is just me trying to be like person XYZ, and you crumple it up and you throw it away and you're like, what's the real me trying to say? Is that ever a moment you have?
Every now and then. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, or it's not like I'm not consciously trying to be something else, but if it comes out sounding a little bit like something else, it could go one of two ways. Either I try to like take it in and fix it and make it my own thing, or I'll just totally go 100%, like I'm wearing a costume or something, and just make it very obvious. But most of the time, I will try to kind of backpedal a little bit and rework it so it feels more like my thing. But the thing is, it's like I'm not really like, I can play a lot of styles of music and there's a lot of things I can emulate, but I'll never do anybody else perfectly, right? Like if there's lots of guitar courses out there where it's like so and so teaches guitar in the style of Stevie Ray Vaughan or something. I can't do that, because it just won't sound like. And even my biggest influences, like Jeff Beck or somebody like that, like I could show a couple things, but like I can't, And then after a while, it's just sort of is my own crappy version of that. So, I think that's kind of like one of those things. It's like, if you have influences, like you have to have them, right? That's what gives you direction and helps you develop your own thing. But I used to tell students this every now and then. I would say, like, look, if your biggest hero, your biggest influence called you on stage tomorrow, could you have a musical conversation with them using your own voice? And I have to tell myself that all the time because it's hard. There's a lot. It's like if Steve Vai is your biggest influence and he's like, hey man, I'm coming to Columbus tomorrow, I'd love for you to sit in. Can you play and trade with him and have it not sound like Steve Vai and then like diet Steve Vai? Right? You'd want it to sound like Steve Vai and Cam. You know what I'm saying? So I always think about that when I feel like I'm maybe getting too influenced by somebody. To turn that filter on.
I really like that. Mark, can you talk to me about one other dynamic of music, like space, for example? Earlier we were talking about tension or release, but also maybe even like playing quietly. Like,
yeah, sure.
Different
dynamics.
Yeah. What would you say is one dynamic you'd like to open more musicians' eyes up to?
Well, I think dynamics is actually the one I was going to say. Being able to play softly, being able to play loudly when you need to play, loud. And I know this is like pretty specific towards certain styles of music. You know, and if you're in a metal band, you're going to be loud all the time, most of the time, and that's fine. It's what it's for. But if you are, you know, in like a fusion or whatever jam music, improvisation music, let's just say, let's put the blanket over it there. Dynamics are super important, and I think they can really speak to a crowd a lot. Occasionally, we'll do it if people are talking. We'll just get really quiet all of a sudden, and then there's the one guy that's like, blah, 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 and then he's like, oh, and then he's quiet, and then we look at him and we smirk, and then we bring the volume up a little. No, I know it's terrible, but yeah, I mean, a lot has been said about space is in terms of how it fits the groove. I mean, a lot of times in groove-based music, funk or something like that, the reason why it's funky is because there's space between the notes and between all the instruments. You know, everyone's kind of fit into a pocket, into a lane. Nobody's really overstepping anybody, and I think that space is what makes your head move, because you want to fill that space with your body language, right? And if there's stuff in all those spaces, then there's no room for you to move. You know, so I try to be better about that myself. It's actually it's hard because I'm the only guitar player in my band, but
it's so easy to love to hear ourselves think.
Yeah, sure.
Space it can be hard to come by.
Right, I agree. And, you know, again, this is sort of specific to the kind of music that we're talking about, you know.
Mark, let's say your niece or your daughter or someone was talking to you and they're asking for your advice on pursuing a professional career in music. Like, Mark, how can I achieve financial success and make this my life? What kind of general advice would you give them?
Oh, man. Well, if I knew it, I would be following it. But this business is not easy. Nothing is handed to you. And I think the more diverse you are in your abilities and skills, I think the safer it will be for you to pursue a career. You know, I've been pursuing the sort of artist path now for the last couple of years. But, you know, outside of my band and maybe Snarky Puppy and a few other kind of creative projects, most of what I did was sort of as like a working guitar player, like for hire. I did tours with different artists. I did recording sessions. I taught lessons for a while, you know, did gear demos, did all kinds of stuff, you know, in all kinds of different styles of music, really. I think that's been kind of what's helped me out so much, I think, is because I could kind of do a lot of things musically, and I think that's important, because, you know, you got to be good. You know, it's like it helps if you can play. You don't have to be the best. Nobody's really the best, but like if you're a solid and you've got good interpersonal skills, you can make this work. I think a lot of times stuff doesn't happen for them or whatever, or the opportunities aren't able to develop because of personalities or some kind of trait that's completely non-musical, you know. If people who are just not on time, or they don't want to be prepared, or they don't have a good attitude, you know. I mean, you really have to treat it as a job. You got to show up on time, knowing what you're supposed to do, and do it with a smile on your face, even if maybe you don't want to be there. It's interesting how many things sort of fall apart for people because they haven't achieved those sort of simple, what I would think it would be simple skills. They can all play, you know, they can play great, but, you know, if they're never there on time, then or something, you know, whatever. So it's sort of those little elements of professionalism that I think everyone needs to kind of develop. You know, but yeah, I would say take it seriously, you know, work at it, practice, get good at a lot of things, learn how to do more than just play your instrument, and then expect to have good months and bad months financially. And there's no shame in having another job while you do it. I did, you know, it's totally, the other thing to think about is like, don't ever think that like you have to be a full-time musician to be a musician, you know. I have lots of friends who do other things besides just play music. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So, Mark, lots of people listening to this, they're aspiring musicians. They have these goals. We all set these goals, these milestones that we hope to reach, and we have these expectations like, oh man, today I'm interviewing Mark Lettieri. I hope this goes well. And then there's all this, there can be like pressure, with nervousness that builds up. And then you come off the stage where thousands of people screaming, and all this kind of thrill starts to subside, and maybe you even realize like the emptiness of your original nervousness and how it was just kind of in your mind. And also there's this feeling of grandeur with like rock star dreams, where I think, with anything that we set out to hopefully accomplish, we realize it might not be what it seems. And I'm curious for you, like having achieved these milestones that so many like have their sights set on, getting to play in front of huge crowds, even just being able to pay your bills as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what that's shown you about what truly matters to you in your life, like beyond music, and what achieving like your earthly goals has kind of taught you just about life and what matters as being a person.
Well, I mean, I think I'm probably the same person I was 15, 20 years ago when I started doing this for a living, probably a lot smarter now. But I mean, at the end of the day, my job is to make music, but also really to provide for my family. So that's kind of like my, I'd say my number one goal was taking care of the household. That's a decision that I've chosen to do. So, which is more than just sort of a financial commitment. It's actually just sort of like a personal, dad commitment. Like, if I'm going to go on the road or something, it better be for something I really want to do, or that's going to really, bring home some money or something. And hopefully it's both of those things. Because time away from my kid and wife is time that I don't get back. You know what I mean? So I got to be really particular about that kind of stuff. And, when I'm working at home, like making sure I'm taking breaks and if my daughter comes in to here while I'm working on something, like that's not an interruption, that's a blessing. Even though it might on the surface feel like an interruption, because I'm like, I was in the middle of something, what are you doing? That's not a good way to react. It's like, those are the best moments, it might not appear that way on the surface, but because that they're showing interest in what you're doing, you're showing interest in what they're doing, and if they get hip to your music that you're making, that's great. So I've definitely always thinking about that kind of stuff. I mean, you mentioned like kind of the nervousness of gigs and stuff. That stuff kind of never really goes away. It doesn't matter how many live recordings with Snarky Puppy I've done. I still freak out before all of them, and I think that's just probably taking years off of my life, but we'll just keep going with it until I'm not around to do it anymore. So that kind of stuff doesn't change. Doesn't matter how many people you play in front of or whatever arena you played at or whatever. It's kind of always going to be there, which is good. I mean, it means you're holding yourself to a very high standard.
Yeah.
There should be a little bit of nerves because you have a really hard job to do and you want to do it as well as you can do it. I think that's the hard thing. It's like, I know I have the ability to go out there and just crush it. Hopefully it'll happen, but it might not, so that's kind of where the nerves happen, but they only happen because I know I can go out there and crush it. If I go out on stage and it's just like, whatever, then that means that I don't care. I shouldn't be there, because then if I don't care what I sound like, that's not good, You don't want to be in positions like that. If you're on a gig where you just don't care, you should don't do the gig. Go home.
And allow the nerves to motivate you.
Yeah.
I love it. Mark Lettieri, man, so great to get to speak with you, get to learn from you.
Yeah, sure, man. You too, Cam.
Big fan of the funk music, of what you're putting out. Mark Lettieri Group's going to be at the Summit Music Hall March 24th, and got a whole tour coming up. So, Mark, where can people find you on the social medias? You got a website, ticket link, all that? We'll have something in the description for sure.
Yeah, I mean, marklettieri.com/tour if you want to get tickets to the Columbus show at Summit, which is going to be really cool. I'm excited about that. And then, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And thankfully, I have a fairly unique name, so you could just Google it and it'll probably show up. I think there's like a hockey player in New Jersey with the same name, so it's not him. I think there may be like one or two lawyers with that name. It's not them. It's the guitar player. So you can just Google it. You'll find me. It's pretty easy.
The guitar player.
Yeah. Mark Lettieri, the guitar player.
Awesome. Much love to all of you. Mark, so great to meet you, my man.
You too.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely, man.
If you made it this far, thank you for listening, and a big thank you to our sponsors, Hemp Relief CBD, SEM Tickets, Devil Wind Brewing, and Artillery Productions. We got links in the description below. Go check out all the awesome stuff they've got going on, and yeah, much love, everyone.